Hello and happy Monday. Thanks so much for being here tonight. I am Jackie Baker with your live dose of real estate reality. I'm a real estate agent up here in northern New Jersey, serving the Bergen County area, and we talk every week about real estate, and sometimes we get into New Jersey a little bit. So thanks so much for joining me. If you are new here, welcome. For those of you who have been coming back faithfully every week, thank you so much. I so appreciate you guys. So now the topic of the week is: did the market bottom out? Okay, so are we out of this housing recession and things are starting to turn around? See, it's amazing, right? It's amazing like what a couple of weeks can do. When you have a lower interest rate, it drives the demand back, and now things are just crazy again, much sooner than a lot of experts anticipated. So this week, I am so happy to have with me. I have Greg Wareham. I'm going to bring him on right now. Hello, Greg. How are
Hey,
you?
hey, Jackie. Hi, everybody.
So thank you for being here. Greg is a mortgage lender. He is located down in Holmdel, which is, I say it's the shore, but you say it's Central Jersey. I mean, we have that whole debate with Central South Jersey. I mean, what do you say? What do you
I
say,
mean,
Greg?
we're kind of right on the middle. I tell people we're right at the beginning of the New Jersey shore. My wife would say we're in central New Jersey. So I
Okay.
can't even get it right at my house.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. You're the shore. I'm sorry. I still like the
The
first time we
gateway to the
spoke.
shore.
Yeah, the first time we spoke, I said you're at the beginning of the shore. That's not Central Jersey to me. Sorry, I don't want to like throw shade to those in Central Jersey, but there is Central Jersey. But when you get to Holmdel, the PNC Bank Art Center, we're at the shore. That's
That's where the magic starts.
yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Which company are you with, and just
Yeah.
have at it. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate it, Jackie. And thank you for having me on the show. And I
Yeah,
appreciate everyone joining the show. So my
yeah.
name's Greg Wareham. I've been in the industry, in the mortgage industry, since 1998. And during that time, we've obviously seen a lot of different patterns in the industry. I've been lucky enough to still be in it after a 25-year time frame. And, moving forward into this market, really looking forward to things that are coming down the pike. I think, Jackie and I were talking a little bit off air about some of the different things going on in the marketplace. I think we're in for a good year as long as we're looking for the right opportunities.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. But now, so what we're talking about this week, let me pull this article up. This is I just have to crack up because here we are. Now everyone's like, "Oh, the market's recovering." Like, okay, here we go. All right, so this is from Fortune magazine. So the housing market recession could be bottoming out. What does that mean for home prices? So really interesting. So let me go back here. Okay. We're just going to read a little bit here. The Fed Chair Jerome Powell made it crystal clear last summer spiking mortgage rates would help to reset the U.S. housing market, which had turned into a buyer's nightmare during the pandemic. Yeah, I agree with that. Of course, spiking mortgage rates wouldn't magically build more homes. However, the higher rates, in theory, could rebalance the U.S. housing market by throwing cold water on the pandemic's housing demand boom, allowing inventory breathing room to rise and pushing home prices lower. Uh, that's also exactly what unfolded in the second half of last year. Sales of both new and existing homes went into a free fall mode, while U.S. home prices started to fall for the first time since 2012. So, Greg, I have to ask you, what are you seeing right now as far as loan applications? So, are you see an uptick in applications in the past couple of weeks since the rates came back down?
Yeah, Jackie, we have. So we saw things really start to slide down towards October into November.
Yep.
The month of January, things have really picked up significantly, especially after the past couple of weeks. We've really seen a big uptick.
Yeah.
So it's been
Okay.
great.
So another thing I'm curious about: are you seeing more people going for the ARM loans, or are we still looking at conventional?
Now, it's a great question. A lot of it depends on the loan amount.
Okay.
So when you look at the adjustable rate mortgages, when you get into conforming loan amounts, so we'll call conforming loan amounts anything under 729,000. The adjustable interest rates, we're in what's called an inverted yield curve right now in the marketplace. So what that means is the cost of short-term money can be higher than long-term money. and adjustable interest rates as short-term money. So what happens on these conventional loans, although you can get a little bit lower of an interest rate on a 7-year adjustable or 10-year adjustable fixed over the first 7 or 10 years, it's not a significant difference from the 30-year fixed.
Mm,
You get a higher loan amounts, kind of changes the whole lending landscape.
okay.
Now you can start to put people into what you'd consider a jumbo mortgage. And a jumbo mortgage is we're seeing interest rates that are significantly better than the 30-year fixed.
Okay.
And the reason for that behind the scenes is what a jumbo mortgage is. It basically means that the bank is lending their own money. So they're going to lend their money, they're going to service that loan. And the way the bank's looking at it is it's only a short-term instrument. They're only going to be in it for 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. So
Okay.
they'll lend at a lower interest rate. When you look at those conforming loan amounts behind the scenes, all those loans get sold to primarily two agencies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And that they don't want to, because that's a free market product, nobody wants to get stuck in that inverted yield curve and in a bad situation. So they're keeping the spreads very narrow on those adjustable interest rates.
Okay.
But if you're borrowing, if it's a jumbo mortgage, adjustable interest rate could certainly be the right product for the right person. As long as you understand all the risks and the pros and cons with it.
Right. So what's the limit on a jumbo loan? What's the amount you can borrow up to to be considered jumbo?
So if you're going over 729,000, and they just changed it this year,
Okay.
you have between 729 and a little over $1 million. You have two options. You can go into what's called a conforming high balance loan, which
Mhm.
is something that's sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, or you can go into a jumbo loan. So once you get over that 729 and up, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, you can consider that a jumbo mortgage,
Mhm.
and you can get better pricing on it. That's the reality on the fixed rate
Got
and
it.
on the adjustable rate.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, when we bought our first house in 1998, I think our loan, oh my God, I want to say our mortgage was for like $250,000, and that was considered jumbo back then. And I remember having a heart attack. My husband told me, like, jumbo loan, what does that mean? Like,
Right.
one, we're borrowing so much money, it's like 250. Oh yeah. Who'd have thought,
Yeah.
And now here we are. People are borrowing, three quarters of a million to $1 million. Like,
Sure.
it's crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, let me get back to this really quick. Oh, hello, Dom. How are you? You're from Fast Paced Tampa. I know the Tampa market's getting crazy too. Um, Greg, if you could see the comments on your screen, you hit the thing that says comments.
Oh, here we
You'll
go.
be able to see them there. Oh, hello, Joseph Barbier from San Antonio. Awesome. Thanks for being here. I'm loving this. I am loving this. This is great. Okay, so I want to go down this article a little bit. So they'd asked some questions. All right. So Fortune had asked, there were early signs that housing demand, which plummeted last year as mortgage rates spiked, is starting to recover. Are you also seeing this? If so, is this simply seasonality or result of mortgage rates coming down a bit? There has been an uptick in buyer interest since the beginning of the year related to three key things: seasonality, acceptance, and discounts. So seasonality goes on to say the housing market traditionally is the slowest at the end of a given year, picks back up in January and goes full force during the spring selling season, starting around the Super Bowl. Okay, early indications are that buyers are out shopping again. Oh yes, I can attest to that. And you can attest to that too, Greg. They're back out with a vengeance. Now, acceptance. Okay, this is what we were talking about before, Greg. Consumers have been mourning the loss of record low mortgage rates. For example, if a consumer was able to afford the monthly payment of a $500,000 house at the beginning of last year without changing their budget, they are now looking for a house in the $350,000 range. Ouch. So for some consumers, they are unwilling or unable to move forward with a purchase. For others, they are entering the acceptance phase. We are on the 10th consecutive week of mortgage rates averaging below 7%. This stability in rates is giving consumers a bit more confidence about where the market is right now. Some existing home sellers and many builders are offering funds to help buy down the interest, with adjustable rate mortgage options and 30-year fixed rate mortgage options. So that was my next question for you, Greg. Are you
Mhm.
seeing people people buying points?
So we are. And I just want to make one clarification on jumbo. It's county specific.
Oh,
So when I
really?
look at my county and I give you a number of 729,000, that's what we are here. But in different parts of the
Wow.
country, it depends on what county you're in, what
Oh, I
constitutes
didn't.
jumbo.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
We're in what's considered a high price area. Lucky us. So it
I know.
changes the rules a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, with points, discount points. Now I had back in I'm gonna say November, October. Yeah, it was October. I took this young couple out. They ended up buying a house in Morristown. One of the homes we looked at, the seller had been on the market for a while, and the seller was offering to give a credit for a two was it 2-1? It was a 2-1 buy down
Hmm.
to the buyer. So that was the only time I had seen that. And I don't know if that's trend's gonna continue so much, because, the market it's picking back up to the point where it was 2 years ago, where multiple offers, bidding wars. I mean, not every town,
Hmm.
but if a house obviously is priced right, it looks great, people are just gonna they're just gonna throw their money at it.
Right.
So, but you're seeing people though by getting discount
I,
points?
I am. And there's the thing to really pay attention to on the points is what's the point of diminishing returns on it? Because generally speaking, if you pay 1 point, the rule of thumb's always been that it reduces your interest rate by 1/4%.
Right.
Now, what we've seen in this market is you get a little bit more bang for your buck. So now, if you're paying a point, you might get a 3/8% reduction. Some days in the market, you get as much as a 0.5% reduction to the interest rate. But just because, say, you get that 0.5% doesn't mean the second point gives you a 0.5% as well. So once you start to progressively buy down that interest rate with points, maybe that first point gives you, let's say, 3/8%. But
Mhm.
that second point that you pay may only give you 1/4%. The
Okay.
third point may only give you 1/8%. So you really got to pay attention when you're talking to your mortgage person as to what gives me the biggest bang for my buck.
Right.
So you don't want to just throw points on it. You want to see, okay, well, what's it really do for me? How low does it drop my rate? And what's my break even on it? But I think
Exactly.
if you can get into a good break even, Jackie, with maybe even 3 years, and you know that you're going to be in the property for a long period of time, it'll certainly make sense longer term.
Absolutely. That's I was just gonna say that. As long as you're there long enough, yeah, you make that money back. Um, so so
And
really yeah, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, if I could even speak to that 2-1 buy down.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. So everyone knows you hear the term points thrown around all the time in the industry.
Mhm.
Well, what's a point? A point is another way of saying 1%. So
Yep.
if you put 1 point on the loan, it equals 1% of your loan amount. So on a $500,000 loan, 1 point is 1%, it's $5,000. Now, the kind of the vogue thing that came into the market about 6 months ago that I haven't seen in years is this 2-1 buy down.
Mhm.
So basically, what that is if you go through this 2-1 buy down, in the first year, your interest rate is 2% lower than what the market rate is. So, as an example,
Yep.
if rates are 6.5%, the first year you pay 4.5%.
Yep.
The second year, the rate goes up to 5.5%. And then the third year, you're back at that original 6.5%.
Right.
So it definitely gives you some short term relief.
Yep.
And what the cost is on it to do it, it's typically paid by the builder, or it's always paid by the builder or the seller. The buyer doesn't pay for it. The
Mhm.
cost is that difference in interest rate between the 4.5% and 6.5%, or the difference in payment, and then between the 5.5% and 6.5% difference in payment. You add all that money up, and that's what it costs to do it.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, look at that. So I wasn't aware of that. Okay. That's okay. That's
So
interesting.
it can be a really cool tool, Jackie, for the right person. But
Mhm.
then you're going to look at it. Hey, does it make more sense to take that, 2 points it costs to buy that interest rate down and buy it down to 5.5% and have that
Right.
longer term?
Right. Yeah, I mean, listen, whatever it's gonna take, um, to help ease the pain. But so here's my next question. You can refinance though after that period's over with, right? And it reverts back to the original interest rate or no?
Correct.
You
You
can.
can
You
refinance.
can.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you got the cost of refinancing on top of that.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Well, you know what? You gotta weigh your options and, see what it's worth. So let's just jump. Let's look at a couple of comments here. We have Ms. Margarita G. Hello from Asbury Park. Hi there. Thanks for being here. What do we got here? Joseph, me and wife planning to move there, and I'm 100% disabled vet. Are you looking to move? Because you mentioned Hawaii. I don't know. Is that where you're looking? Because we're in Jersey. um, that 2-1 buy down, is that good? I have done research on that. Yeah, I mean, Joe, it's definitely a good thing to consider. But you need to talk to a lender to fully understand. And the most important thing is you got to get pre-approved. You got to know how much you qualify for. So if you're saying you're a vet, so you're going to be going VA, I'm assuming, and VA loans have really good rates. So do you deal with a lot of VA loans?
I do. It's the best loan in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
You can put down 0%, not pay any PMI or mortgage insurance, and your interest rate is lower than the conventional mortgage. Great mortgage.
Yeah, it's great. The only issue with here in Jersey and I'm sure you had this experience when I had a couple of people who were going VA, and with that 0%, that would freak out sellers. And I just feel like realtors are not, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of realtors are not educated on the VA loan and what it means when you're putting, you're 0% down. They have no skin in the game. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They served in the military. This is their benefit. This is their right. It's doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
They qualified to buy this house. They qualify for this loan.
I,
So
and I think to that point, it's the one thing, and not to get political, it's the one thing that the government does really well for veterans. And I can pick apart some other things with healthcare and so forth.
yeah.
But that loan is tremendous. It's the only mortgage that's guaranteed by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's so interesting, Jackie, is it's regional, right? So, I've done a lot of loans in the Maryland area, and there's a lot of veterans in that area.
Yeah.
So it's always accepted.
Yep.
And then in our area of New Jersey, people look at it, well, you're not putting anything down.
No, I
But a
know.
good loophole to that is if you have money to put down. So you could put down your deposit money. Say you're putting down a $20,000 deposit, you can get that money back at the closing. So at least it's a
Yes.
good faith for you.
Yes, I've heard that. You can do good faith. Absolutely. I have heard that before. So, okay. Oh, Brian Wong is here. Hi, Brian. How much higher interest do you get if your down payment is 10% versus 20%? This is a good question, Greg.
It's a great question, Brian. And the answer is the interest rate's the same.
Okay.
So it's a misconception that if you put down 5%, 10%, or 15% on most loan products, the interest rate's exactly the same as if you put 20% down.
Yep.
What you find is your first break point in interest rate is when you put down at least 25%. That's when you see rates start to come down a little bit.
Interesting. And of course, your credit affects that too, affects your interest rate. So if you have any debt, credit card debt, and you got your credit score isn't stellar, clean it up. That's what I tell people. If you're waiting on the sidelines, get rid of your credit card stuff. You want to have a good interest rate. So let's see. Oh, Dom, you're awesome. For the coffee fund. What's it going to take to break this supply issue? Dom, if you know that, you'd be like, yeah, you'd probably become so rich if you had the answer to that and solve the country's problem of the lack of inventory. What's it going to take? We were just talking about this before. Greg and I were like, with these interest rates, if they come down at the 5% range, it's still higher than what 85% of the homeowners in this country have. 85% have an interest rate of 4% or less. Where are they going to go? Why are they going to trade up only to spend more money? I don't know, Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard because if you say you have a mortgage right now and you have 500,000 on the mortgage, and your interest rate is 3%. For you to sell your house and take out another mortgage at 6%, there's got to be a real need for you to do it. Increase in family size, you change your job,
Yeah.
it's an unfortunate divorcing situation. Like there really has to be a significant need for people to do that. Where rates were low for so long, buying up, it was just a luxury that we had taken for granted.
Yep.
So now you go and you take $1 million mortgage out, you're paying the same that you were paying on an $800,000 mortgage, as an
Right.
example. So, and that's probably, I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate. Jackie and I were talking about this earlier. I don't think we're going to see interest rates get quite that low again, even though we're going to see them come down. I mean, I think by the end of the year, we start to be back in the fives from an interest rate standpoint. And I think at least that'll create a little bit more overall stability. Like it's a palatable number.
Yes, I agree. I think it's definitely a good number to stabilize everything. To stabilize this market. So, here's another good question. Hi, Hector Fernandez. What % down to avoid PMI?
Your audience is fantastic, Jackie.
I
Everyone's got
told you.
You're great.
I told you.
You're amazing.
Did I deliver or what?
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a pleasure. So, Hector, the answer is when you buy a house, you have to put down 20% to avoid PMI. Now, there's some caveats to that. So that's as long as it's a conventional mortgage or what you'd consider a conforming mortgage, jumbo, conventional, or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, that type of thing. If it's an FHA mortgage, even if you put down 20%, you're still going to pay monthly PMI. So you have to be aware of what the loan type is. The other thing that I would say is, or a question I get all the time is, when can I eliminate PMI? So I put down 10%, and now I feel like I have the equity position in my property now where I have more than 20% equity. How do I eliminate it? So technically, in order to, once you're in the house and you put down 10%, to eliminate the PMI, you have to have 22% equity in the property, either through reduction in your principal, appreciation in value, or a combination of both. And once you have that, you reach out to your mortgage company, the person who you send your mortgage payments to, so the loan servicer, to tell them, I'd like to eliminate the PMI. And what they'll do is they'll have an appraisal done to the property. They'll make you pay for it. And if you have that equity position, then you can eliminate the PMI.
Yep. Yeah. When we bought our first house, we had PMI. We could only put 15% down. So I forget how many years it was, but that's exactly what we had to get done, the appraisal. And then we got it eliminated, which was great. So let's see. It's me. Let's see here. Okay, Brian. I'm afraid of selling my house and not finding another house. So thinking of buying first, but my down payment would only be 10%. The plan afterwards is to refinance after selling my house. Good strategy?
It can be, Brian. It depends on where interest rates are at. So here's the options that you have. So after you buy your house and now you sell yours and now you want to buy down your principal balance to avoid the PMI and really lower your payment, right? Because you don't want to borrow that higher sum of money for a longer period of time because all your interest is calculated on it. Once you sell your house, you call your loan servicer and you say, listen, I want to put $100,000 towards my mortgage and I want you to recast my mortgage. And what recasting is they'll recalculate your payment using that lower amount that you owe and give you a new payment structure. Now, and your interest rate stays the same. The good part about a recast is it doesn't cost you the same amount of money as a refinance does. So a refinance, when you look at title insurance and your lender fees and all that stuff that goes into it, it's like a $3,500 transaction without your tax escrow. Where a recast, depending on the lender, is going to cost you somewhere between $250 and $500 to do it.
That's something.
It's great. And it's something that
really something.
Not everyone really knows that. And that's the way that you handle that. Now, if interest rates have dropped, Brian, well, now it may make sense to just refinance the mortgage, but you don't want to do that unless you're getting a significant reduction in interest rate. You go through a recast.
That's great stuff. Thanks, Greg. I didn't know that a recast only costs that much. That's crazy. All right. Let's see. Daniel Kelly. Inventory in New Jersey seems really low in my area. It is. It is low. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm sorry. It really is. Let me see. What else we got here? If either of you know, can you talk about a new type of mortgage I heard about recently? Something about how the rate is different each year for a few years. Are we talking about the adjustable rate? That's how I'm reading that. Is that how you're reading that, Greg?
It's that, or it could be Daniel and Jackie. It may be that 2-1 buy down we
The
spoke
two
about.
on buy down. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Where you just kind of
Um,
get that short term relief, but then the interest rate goes back up again.
right. Yep. Yeah.
And one thing I would say about the 2-1 buy down, again, it can be the right product for the right person. But my advice that I always give to the people that I work with is you have to be comfortable with what we'd consider the fully indexed payment. So you have to know what's that payment at 6.5%. If it starts at 4.5, and it's going to be at 6.5 in 3 years, you have to be comfortable with that payment, because you can't bet on the fact that the market's going to get better and you're going to be able to refinance.
Yep. Exactly. And I say the same thing to people who've asked me about the ARM loans. And I even did a video about the ARM loans. You have to look the worst case scenario, what that payment's going to be. Because
Right.
once it shoots up to that rate, well, that's what got people in trouble in 06, 07. But we won't get into that. So let's
Ooh.
Brian. Yeah. What's the maximum debt to income ratio for a conventional loan?
Great question, Brian. So there's two ratios on your debt to income ratio. There's what's called the front end ratio, which is your housing ratio. And then there's the back end ratio that accounts for all the debt on your credit report. So what the front end ratio is and how it's calculated is you look at your principal, your interest, your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, and your HOA due if you have one, if it's condo or townhouse, or even some planned urban developments may have an HOA fee, and you add all that up. And then you divide it by your monthly gross income, and it gives you a ratio. Typically, that ratio for conventional is going to have to be about 43% or under. If your credit's really good and you're putting down a good down payment, maybe it goes up to 45. Now, my recommendation, it's kind of high though, right? So that means for every dollar of gross income that you have coming in, 43 cents of that's going out to your mortgage if you're maxing that out. So you really want to make sure you got a lot of disposable income even after you do the loan. The second ratio is what's called the back end ratio. Now we take that principal, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA due, and then we also add to that minimum car payment, minimum credit card, minimum student loans, and you add all that debt, divide it by your gross income, and you come up with another ratio. That ratio for conventional has to be under 50%.
Okay.
And even for it to be at say 49%, Brian, you have to have really good credit, and they may want to see some sort of reserves that you have, which is money after you close, how much you have left over. So, but you do see them go that high. On an FHA mortgage, you can see that back end ratio go to 55, maybe even see it at 57. And one more thing I would add is for a VA loan, there's no debt to income ratio requirement.
Oh,
None.
on a VA loan.
On a VA loan.
Really?
So on a VA loan, there's no debt to income ratio requirement, and there's no loan limit requirement. So what the VA does is they use more of a disposable income calculation to say, hey, your debt to income ratio may be 65% after you buy it. But if your income's, as an example, 20,000 a month, you have plenty of disposable income, and they may approve that. For loan limit, it's all what's common to the area. So you could do $1.5 million VA loan if it's common to the area.
Holy cow. Wow. That's really interesting. Thank you, Greg. That was a really good question. Brian's got another one. How do I know what lender will recast my loan?
If you want to type in the chat who the lender is, I could probably tell you. Otherwise, you have to call the number on your statement, Brian.
Yeah. So not every lender would do it to recast a loan?
Well, so it depends on the type of loan. So Fannie Mae, who buys most conventional mortgages,
Yeah.
you have to be able to recast a Fannie Mae loan.
Okay.
That's their guideline. But when you get into something like a jumbo loan, where now the bank actually owns that debt behind the scenes, it's up to
Yeah.
them.
Okay. Got you. Got you. Okay. That makes sense. Um, okay. We have here Alina. Thank you for being here, Alina. Welcome. What's a significant amount to refinance?
Two things on that, Alina. It's what's your balance is the big one, and what's it do for your payment. So here's what I mean by that. So say you're at 8%. I'm just going to throw a number out there. You're at 8% right now, and you've been paying on that mortgage for 15 years. So you originally borrowed 300,000, and now you owe 150,000. Even if you refinance that mortgage at 7.5%, well, it's not a great difference in interest rate, but it may give you a huge amount of savings if you do it for another 30 years, right? Because now you're recasting that money for a long period of time. I'm not advising to do that, just trying to give you the information. So it depends on someone's individual need. That could potentially make sense. The rule of thumb I usually go with the clients that I deal with is you really want a 1% reduction in interest rate for it to make sense. And then what I'll also look at is, okay, well, what's it cost us to do this? And what's your break even on it? Because if you're planning on listing your home for sale with Jackie 12 months from now, and your rate's 8% and we can get you down to 4%, well, I don't know how much sense that makes because of the cost that you incurred to do the refinance relative to what the savings are. And if you're going to list the house anyway, may not make sense to do it at all.
Mhm. Right. Good point. All right. And we have chicken soup for dinner. Love your name there. How are you? I got a letter that Freddie Mac bought my mortgage. Oh, wait, it froze a little there. I got a letter that Freddie Mac bought my mortgage. The service portal is the same. Does that change my ability to refinance, recast, or remove PMI? These are great questions.
Oh, it's such a great question.
Oh my God.
So, all right. So when you get a letter, did you just purchase the house recently and receive that letter?
Can you comment on that? Could you answer that question? Chicken soup for dinner? I have a feeling she might have just bought it.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
So there's two different factors at play. There's who bought the loan and who's the servicer on the loan. So when your loan closed with the lender may sell the servicing rights. So they
Yep.
may sell it to Mr. Cooper's a big loan servicer.
Yep.
So, okay, you bought it in November. It makes sense.
Yep.
So what they're telling you is after the mortgage crash in 2008, 9, 10, 11, however long that went.
12. Yeah.
12. After that happened, a new disclosure had to go out. And people needed to know who purchased the loan behind the scenes. Is it Fannie Mae? Is it Freddie Mac? This used to never be disclosed. Because for you as a homeowner and someone who has the mortgage, it doesn't have any bearing on your mortgage at all. So it doesn't change your ability to recast or anything like that. But who you really want to talk to on that is the loan servicer. So who you make your payments to. So there's who owns it and who do you make your payments to.
All right. Good stuff.
And the reason they had to disclose that is the government had instituted some programs for people to be able to refinance, even if they had a negative equity position on the property. And the challenge was the loan had to be with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and no one really was familiar with those agencies back then. So they required a disclosure then telling people. And now a company like Fannie Mae, most people have heard of it. 15 years ago, no one really heard of it. Fannie Mae was a behind-the-scenes company.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. All right. That's really cool. Let me go down here. Alina says, is 2023 the new 2008? No. No. Right? Am I right, Greg? Come on. Let's be
I
real.
can give you my long-winded response to it. So
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
I got something really good that you sent over to me, Jackie, that's going
Yeah.
to sum this up really quickly. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but it was on one of the charts that came over.
Yeah.
So
I can pull it up on the screen. What chart is it? Let
it
me,
was the chart showing the number of applications for mortgages.
all
And it
right.
really shows in like 2003. There it
Yep.
is.
I got it. Yep.
I don't know if everyone can see it, but what you like, I'm pointing to it like you know what I'm pointing at. So in that 2003, 4, 5, is you can that's the to this graph, that's towards the beginning of it, towards the left. And
Yep.
what that gold line is, it shows you how many mortgage applications were in place.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a huge amount of them back then. And then you see the kind of the crash after that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why did the market crash? And there's some misconception in the marketplace. Yes, there were some toxic mortgages in the marketplace. Yes, there were some banking fundamentals with derivatives and different things behind the scenes that were outlandish that they don't do anymore. But the number one reason the market crashed is there was so much inventory. Builders were building and building and building, and the house values were going up and up and up. One day, all the buyers went away. And it crashed because there was no one to buy the house. So now you have supply and demand, you got all this inventory, and then you have no buyers. Well, the prices plummet 30%. In this market, it's completely different. So, although we've seen housing prices appreciate over the course of time, there's still no inventory, a very limited inventory. So we're not going to see that. All it's doing now is stabilizing supply and demand, and it's still kind of demand heavy. So we're not going to see that same negative impact, Alina, that we saw back in 2008. We're a long way away. There's actually a housing shortage.
Yeah,
So
definitely not. Yeah, there's a housing shortage crisis. I mean, forget about the market crashing. We have a shortage crisis. There's not enough houses. And I had read an article recently that some expert is saying it could take 10 years to meet the demand we have now. We're short in this country by 4 million homes.
yeah,
Yeah. And
it's insane.
and it was after the crash, the builders all walked away and they didn't return back to building. So that's why we're in the mess we're in right now.
That's such a great point, Jackie.
Yep.
And I was reading that the house building in the past 10 years was at its lowest level since the 1960s. Like that's how long it's been since we produced so
Yeah.
few units.
Wow.
And the reason I wanted to show the graph is you see that peak over towards the left and then a huge drop.
Yep.
And then when you go to our market now, you see a peak to the far right, but look at how much smaller that drop is here
Yep.
compared to the one back then.
Absolutely. Yep. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. I know you look at 2020, it's like, weep, it really went down, but then it
Right.
shot right back up. Oh my God. Yeah, it's let me stop sharing. Okay. So we have other comments here and questions. I love this. This is so much fun. All right. Hi, Brian. So my bank, Navy Federal Credit Union, offers conventional loan with no PMI, but I think the rate is higher. Is this a good deal? I just called them. They're offering 5.375 for 30 and 6.5 for 10. Wow. What do you think?
Well, so here a couple things about that. So first thing is why is the rate higher? So what they've done is they've done something that's called lender paid PMI. So essentially, what Navy Federal is telling you, Brian, is that there's a cost associated with PMI monthly, and that's one way that you can pay PMI. Another way that you can pay PMI is what's called a single premium PMI, where you just pay it all up front. What they're doing is they're premium pricing your loan, so they're increasing that interest rate from where the market's at in an effort to create profitability to pay that PMI for you in full. So that's why the interest rate's higher. Whether or not it's a good deal really depends on your individual situation. So I would want to know how much is the PMI if you pay it. So if the PMI, just quick numbers, if the PMI is $100 a month and you're putting down 10%, well, okay, you may be able to eliminate that PMI in 5 years, right? That's 1,200, 5 years, like $6,000. And then when you look at your difference in payment, Brian, between 5.375 and 6.5, because you're stuck with 6.5 longer term, where's your break even on it? And if you had a question about it as a sidebar, I'd be happy to help you with the math on it.
Yeah, definitely. Brian, I have to, did you see this comment, Greg? I just have to show you this. Brian says, by the way, Jackie, this guy knows what he's talking about.
No, thanks,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes, he does, Brian. That's why I have him here. He knows his
No,
stuff.
you're making me feel good.
Yeah, good. Well,
I got to
hey.
go home later, and I got 4 kids at home.
And they,
like, Dad, I need this.
yeah, they look at you and they look at you like, they don't care, that's my
Right.
kids too. Like, I sold the house today. Like, yes, so, and you're what,
Right.
big
What's for
deal.
dinner?
Yeah, exactly. So, let's see. Oh, Fast NA. Hello, welcome back. Very low inventory in New Jersey for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I said last week we are back in the whole bidding war situation again. In some markets, not every town, not every market, but we have areas here in Bergen County, like Ridgewood. Greg, I don't know if you ever heard of the town of
Nice
Ridgewood.
area.
Ridgewood is ridiculous. It's still getting multiple offers. It's a very desirable town, great downtown, not far from the city, like top rated schools, all the things, so that town is it's like it never stopped. I don't think it ever hit a slump at all. And some other areas, have definitely seen a little bit of a hit, but yeah, I like when was it 2 weeks ago, and I was getting reports back from agents who had open houses, and the amount of people that were flocking these open houses, 100 people, 80 people. I'm like, oh God, I can't.
Yeah, no, the nice houses they're still in demand, and you get that
They
accessible.
are. Yep, they are. And the thing is, and for people who are thinking about selling, here's the other thing that article was saying is that sellers are still apprehensive because they feel the buyer demand is not there, or because of the interest rates, they're holding back. They're not gonna be in the market, but they're obviously out now. Okay. But if you if you get real about your price, if you're serious about selling, I just did a video today that's going out next week about this. You got to get real about your price. I feel some sellers are still in that mindset that they can get top dollar for their house, thinking it's still 2020 or 21 or even 22, and they're overpricing it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let me try it out. Talk to your local agent. Get an accurate market analysis. Listen to what your agent is telling you. We're not dumb. We're watching what's going on. And when I do a market analysis, I literally go by within the last month. Like I have to see what's closed, the most recent close. In the past, it would be the last 3 months. But now we go even like quicker than that to see what things are closing, almost like in real time, because the market's changing so much. But the sellers, my point is, the sellers have to get out of that mindset, and they just have to get out of that mindset and get real with their prices.
It really speaks to Jackie to the importance of reaching out to your local real estate agent.
Yeah.
So I get the question all the time about Zillow, and are the prices accurate? It's like, well, they take an algorithm of an area, and they're not equating that this house is $1 million, this one's 2 million. Like they just take an average.
They do.
It's
right.
absolutely
So
critical for the market.
I've had this realtor on. He's from Tom's River, Jim Flanagan. He's been on a couple of times, and he owns a brokerage, Coldwell Banker Flanagan Realty in Tom's River. And he says, he tells his agents, he's like, Zillow can't smell the cat. They can't say if you had a cat in your house that like peed all over the place, Zillow doesn't know that, so everything affects the value of the home. Right. So, and then people just rely on that stupid Zestimate. I cringe every time I hear people, oh, this is what my Zestimate is. I'm like, it's not. It's not.
Just not.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go back and see a couple more questions here. What do we have here? How good is a school district in Passaic County? Well, it depends. There's several different towns in Passaic County. It depends on which town. I mean, generally they are good. You also have Passaic Technical High School, which is excellent. It was just ranked, I think, one of the best high schools in New Jersey, honestly. But would I recommend, Warner, and welcome, thank you for being here. I would recommend going on niche.com, and you can search whatever town. You can even pull up Passaic County, and it can give you ratings of the school districts, the neighborhoods, the crime data, all that fun stuff. So I highly recommend going on that website to do your research there. Let's see. Darren Buttery, thanks for being here, Darren. Are USDA loans better than conventional when the buyer is well qualified with great credit and a great DTI ratio? How do the PMI and interest rates compare?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
A lot of it's Darren, a lot of it's credit score oriented. I mean, if your debt to income ratio is great, the great thing about USDA is let you do 100% financing. So they'll let you do 100% financing. If I were to compare great credit, USDA loan, and conventional loan, which one's going to give you the lower payment? It's probably the USDA loan. So in that scenario, the challenge with the USDA loan is they're property specific. So you could have a house at number 1 Main Street and a house on number 2 Main Street. House number 1 Main Street qualifies USDA, house number 2 does not. So you literally have to plug in a property address to see if it's USDA qualified.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm going to look down in my area. There's a town right by me, Colts Neck, New Jersey. There's some areas you could do a USDA loan, some areas you cannot do a USDA loan.
Interesting.
So
So that would be the first step someone would take, right, to see if that area qualifies.
you want to see but it's literally address specific. So you
Okay.
can go to the USDA website. If you shoot me an email, I can send it over to you so you can see before you go out and look at a house. But the USDA loan could be a better loan, after we reviewed everything.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thanks for that question. That was a good one. Oh, Warner, thank you. So knowledgeable. Thanks for your channel. Thank you. You see, Greg, people appreciate us.
It's so
They
great.
appreciate it.
What a great audience.
All right. Here's a good question. When will New Jersey home inventory go up? This spring, maybe? I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping. I'm trying to be a little optimistic about it, but last year, I've said this so many times every week and on my weekly videos that the scenarios where I sold houses or my buyers bought a house, those people were either moving out of state, it was a second property, or it was an estate where the homeowner was deceased and the family was selling the home. Those are the only scenarios I dealt with in 22. So I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, will 5% do it? Is that enough? Like you were just saying before, is it worth it for people to trade up? Because that's truly a luxury now. If you're going to trade up to a bigger house, you're going to be paying more money for it. Can they do it? I don't know. So that's the only way. That's the only way you're going to see people like will make that move to sell their house. If they find it, there's going to be needs. There's definitely going to be needs, like you said, Greg. People need a bigger house, whatever, job transfer, divorce, whatever. You have those scenarios, but for the average person to say, "Hey, I want to sell my house. I want something bigger," I don't know.
It's just not a luxury.
No.
It's just changed so much.
Yep, it has. All right, so we got Brian back again. How much impact does mortgage application have on credit score, and how long can you shop before taking another hit?
Brian, we need to talk.
Okay.
So here's how it works, Brian. So in theory, a hard pull of your credit for FICO score should drop your score about 5 points. And those points you're supposed to get back in a 90-day time frame. Now, how long it's good for comes down to how long the credit report is good for relative to the type of loan that you're applying for. So let's just look at a conventional mortgage. Conventional mortgage, your credit report is good for 120 days. So from the date your credit report is pulled, Brian, you'd have to close on a house within 120 days or your credit would need to be repulled. Now, where it gets a little bit confusing is if you subscribe to a credit monitoring service. When your credit's pulled, you get this notification, your credit score dropped 40 points. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Well, I think it's completely misleading to the public, and here's why. So a credit profile score, they use a different scoring system. They use a Vanguard scoring system, not a FICO scoring system. Vanguard has more available points than FICO does. So as a result of that, when your credit's pulled, it tells you your credit score went down a lot more, but the percentage of your credit score is the same as FICO, if that makes sense. So you get this notification, my score dropped 40 points. Well, maybe on the Vanguard score it did, but nobody in the mortgage industry uses Vanguard. The entire industry uses FICO score. So my best advice I can give to people is if you're shopping for a home and you really think you might buy a home in the next 3 or 4 months, you need to have your credit pulled. And the credit report's good for that 120 days because you're going to get a different credit score than you will on a credit profile, credit karma type of thing. And the other part of that is if there's something that can be done to improve your credit score, like in my world, if I pulled someone's credit and their credit score is 698, it's decent credit, but it's not excellent credit, so it impacts your interest rate. The next thing I would do is I would run their credit through what's called a credit analyzer report with the credit agencies, and it doesn't have any negative impact on your credit. The credit agencies will come back to me and tell me exactly what you need to do to get your credit score up to a 700, a 720, and a 740. But now we have time, right? Because you had your credit pulled early enough, you have time to get that credit score up to ensure the fact that you're going to optimize the best possible interest rate when the time comes to lock that interest rate in.
Cool. All right.
Sorry, I zoomed off on a tangent.
No, it's good stuff. This is good stuff. Answering a lot of questions here, Greg. I appreciate it. Nicholas Sanchez, I've been buying a house since February 22, stopped in November because of interest rates until a better time this year. When would be a good time to start again? You know what I'm going to say to that now. Look, everyone's out again. The rates are back down. If you're ready to go, I would jump on it. I really would. The spring market we're starting to see early signs of the spring market, but it typically begins after the Super Bowl. So we're going in. Just be prepared though, because we're saying the inventory is still low. Depending on your price point. So if you're in a lower price point, like say 300, 400, 500,000, you're more than likely going to hit some bidding wars. The higher price homes, depending on the market, it all depends on what town you're looking at. So just be prepared for that. So that's what I have to say about that. Now we have Alina again. Hi, you're just love all the questions tonight. How can you see what a house is worth other than Zestimate? We want to put an offer on a house and don't know if we should pay asking or have room to negotiate without losing out on it. Okay. If you are working with a real estate agent, that agent should do a CMA on the property you want to buy. That's a comparative market analysis. Okay, so they need to be pulling all the homes that sold in that neighborhood or in that town and do a comparison of the prices. And that's how you want to make your offer. Now, if you're going to be going over asking price, what I tell my clients, like I would never say you gotta, you gotta go 50,000, you gotta 25,000. I would never say that. I just tell them if you feel it's worth it, it all comes down to how bad do you want the house at the end of the day. If you put an offer on the house and you can go to bed at night and say, you know what, I can sleep well because that was the best offer I put in and I'm not going to be upset if I don't get it. Like that's the mentality you have to have. So if you're comfortable with going over ask and you just know it, I'm good with this. I don't feel I'm overpaying. That's how you have to do it. Us as real estate agents, it's hard for us we can't recommend what to offer. I mean, I can't tell you definitely go this amount over asking price. Or if it's, say, we're not in the scenario of a bidding war, I give you the range. I could say, here are the comps for this area. This is, this house is very similar to what you want to put an offer on. Maybe you want to stay in that range, or stay in that price point, something like that. But if you're working with a real estate agent, that's what they're supposed to be doing. So there you go. Oh, we got another great comment here. Y'all a great duo. Thanks for making this process.
We're going on the road.
I think we're going to take the show on the road. Oh my God, Greg, who knew? This is great. I'm so excited. Okay, Brian, if you lock in a rate when applying for a loan and the rate goes down when you're about to close, do you have the option to reduce the rate? I love this question.
So the answer is maybe.
Okay.
This is something that's lender specific. Different lenders have different policies as to what they call them float down options, as to what you can do to unlock your loan and relock it prior to closing. So you really want to check with your lender on that.
Yep.
There's no rule that covers the whole industry.
You know what, Greg? Can I get I'm going to put your email address in here right now so people can reach out to you. What's your email again?
So it's Greg at yourmortgageprocess.com.
Okay. Okay. So anybody who would like to reach out to Greg, there you go. I'll also have his email address in the description box below this video once it goes out on YouTube. And for any of you who are watching this after the live recording or doing the replay, feel free to reach out to Greg. He's your guy. This is great stuff. Oh my God. So
I could do this all night.
I know, right? Me too. I love it. So other thoughts about this market? I know you said we're probably going to end up, rates will probably be around like mid fives or so, right? You think for
I
the
think
rest
so.
of
We're
the year?
optimistic about that.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. What's this whole thing? Have you heard about this, that the feds are having this big meeting? I think it was May 10th. And apparently, yeah, is that like they're going to talk about the interest rate again, the federal interest rate? Like, what is I'm seeing other YouTube creators like talk about this in their videos, and I haven't had time to watch them. So, what's
So
the deal?
the Federal Reserve is actually meeting tomorrow and on Wednesday to
Okay.
discuss interest rates. So everyone thinks, when I say everyone, the market thinks that the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates by 1/4%.
Okay.
Now, what happens behind the scenes is you have your stock market and your bond market. Bond market really more controls interest rates than the stock market does. And the market kind of predicts what they think the Federal Reserve is going to do. So if the Federal Reserve increases interest rates by 1/4%, you're probably not going to see anything change in the marketplace as far as the stock market's concerned and the interest rate, mortgage interest rates. Mortgage interest rates are not directly correlated to what the Federal Reserve does. It's a separate market.
Right.
It's a mortgage-backed securities market. Just for rule of thumb, if you want to have an idea as to what interest rates are doing, if you look up what the 10-year Treasury bond yield is at, when that yield goes down, generally that's a sign long-term interest rates are going down. When that yield goes up, it usually means long-term interest rates are going up for mortgages. So, but what the Fed does directly doesn't impact mortgage interest rates. It's more a product of how does the overall market react to what the Federal Reserve says.
Exactly. Right.
So now it does directly impact credit cards, home equity lines. So if you have a credit card and the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates, it'll go up. Direct correlation next month's statement.
Right. Okay. No, I just heard recently too that even though I know you're saying the 10-year Treasury yield that's what impacts the mortgage rates, but wasn't it that the mortgage industry or the banks, they dropped the rates because they liked what they saw, that the inflation was coming down, or that they were taking the steps to bring the inflation down? Because I think this was a surprise to everybody that the rates came back down this quick. That wasn't expected.
Yeah, so it's behind the scenes is kind of complicated. So inflation is definitely what moves what the Fed does.
Right.
So inflation has went down again. To kind of put it into perspective, core inflation for the country. So core inflation is when you take out food and energy prices. So core inflation dropped to 4.7% last month, and it's at its peak, it was at 5.4%. But when you look at the 3-month rolling average, it only went up it went down to 3.6% when you annualize it. So it's a really good sign that inflation is going down. When you
Mhm.
put back in food and energy, then inflation's at about 6.5%, but it's continuing to drop. So what
Okay.
the Federal Reserve's targeting is, how do we get down to, they want to get down to 2%. It's going to be
Yeah.
hard to get to 2%, but they're projecting at the end of the year, it's at 2.9%. At the end of 2024, it's 2.3%. And that just, all it does is give stability. Like,
Yep.
what's bad for mortgage interest rates is instability. When you
Mhm.
see, when you got inflation spiking and you got all this crazy stuff going on in the market, it's bad for your 401k, and it's bad for mortgage interest rates because no market, no bank, nobody likes uncertainty.
Mhm.
So now things are kind of getting a little more stable. So you should see stabilization of rates and investments.
Yep. Okay. All right, cool. All right, that's what we want. We want things to be stable again.
Stable.
So, all right, this has been great. Oh my god, it's been an hour, Greg.
Wow.
Holy
Well,
cow.
this is fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all your questions.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you how much I enjoyed doing this.
Oh,
This was a lot of fun.
same. Same. This has been so much fun. You're so coming back on. So, I think this
Love
is
to
gonna
be.
be
Can I throw a shameless plug out there?
I was gonna do your shameless plug
Oh
for
no,
you.
I'm good then. That's better.
Up allow me. I can take care of that for you.
Thank you.
So, everybody who's still watching, Greg, how cool is this? He has I already have it up on the screen, Greg. You can be very proud of me.
Thank
Where
you.
are you? Your mortgage process. I love this. Greg has a podcast. Actually, there's his website, yourmortgageprocess.com. And you can go over here and you can click on his podcast. He is on, right? You're on Apple, Spotify,
Mhm.
all that fun stuff. You even
Yep.
have a YouTube channel.
YouTube.
Let me pull that up. Can you guys see his channel? Do I have this up? Nope. Wait, hold on. I gotta get sorry. Let me share the other screen. I need to pull up your podcast because I think it's so great. Okay, here we go. This is Greg's podcast, Your Mortgage Process. And I highly, highly recommend you listen to him. This is great. You're driving in your car and you just want to hear all things about mortgage stuff and New Jersey too. He talks a little about the New Jersey market and all this stuff that's going on. And it's great stuff. And if you listen in the next couple of weeks or so, you may hear somebody else on his podcast joining him.
I get a great guest coming up.
Yeah, I like this really cool, awesome guest,
Oh,
and
she
yeah,
knows the market.
yeah, yes. And then let me just bring up your channel. Here we go. And here's Greg's YouTube channel. Go on over, give him a like, watch those videos. You're going to learn so much. If you learned so much tonight, then look at all this information you can get. You can get Greg on podcast and on YouTube. And I just highly, highly recommend you watch, you listen, because you know what you're talking about, right?
Thanks so much, Jackie.
Yeah,
And if there's
thank
any
you.
first-time homebuyers out there listening, on the YouTube channel, I did a whole segment on first-time home buying. It's about a 14-part series, and they're like 3-minute clips, so you kind of understand the whole process, start to finish.
Oh,
It
that's
could be really helpful.
awesome. I'm definitely gonna so I'll be linking your channel and the podcast onto this channel and so people know where to find you. And I can't thank you enough. This is awesome. This was so awesome. I love
Thanks
it.
so much for having me.
Oh,
Thanks for listening, everybody.
yeah. No, everybody,
A
this
great
is
show.
great. The question I told you, I have a great audience.
You
So,
sure do.
all right. So everybody, you have a wonderful week and I will see you all next Monday. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Bye. All right.